Hello and welcome to Wizards, Warriors and Words, a fantasy writing advice podcast. I'm Jed Herne, author of The Thunder Heist, and on today's episode, I'm joined by a very special guest, Adrian Collins. Adrian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jed. I appreciate it, mate.
No worries. And as you listeners can probably tell by our accents, this is the first time we've had two Aussies on the show, and we've kicked out all of the other regular hosts just for some cultural appreciation of Australia. So apologies in advance if you can't tell our voices apart. Normally we have the advantage of like people being from 4 different countries. That's 5 fingers I'm holding up. 4 different countries for people to tell the accents apart. Today you're going to have to just distinguish between Western Australia and Eastern Australia, which is indistinguishable. Anyway, with that spiel out of the way, Adrian, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Adrian. Great start, Adrian. So I run an e-zine called Grimdark Magazine. We've been around for about 7 years. Just hit publish on our 27th issue about an hour ago. We've been very fortunate to publish, a lot of the people that I love reading. So we've published Mark Lawrence in our first issue. We've done Joe Abercrombie, Jeremy Stahl. Who else? Anna Smith Spark a few times. Some goose called Michael R. Fletcher.
I was wondering if you were going to mention him.
Not sure if anyone likes him that much, but I get along with him. Fair enough. Anna Stevens, like the amount of people we published is a significant list, and I've been very fortunate to be in a position where I've been able to set one of these up and just get along with people enough and pay authors enough that they can jump on board and sell us some stories.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think this, first of all, Adrian, thanks again for coming on. I think this will be a really cool episode because we often have authors on to, talk about their writing process and everything, which is great, but it's also going to be really cool today, I think, to get into the mind of a publisher and actually understand the writing business more from that perspective. So I thought we could start by talking a little bit about the Kickstarter that you are running at the moment for Grimdark Magazine, The King Must Fall. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is about?
Yeah, definitely. So I reckon probably 9 months ago, an author called Bradley P. Boilio gave me a shout out of the blue and said, "Hey, Adrian, I've got this idea for an anthology, but I just don't have time to get it done and to push it through. Would you be interested in taking the theme and putting together a Kickstarter like you did with Evil as a Matter of Perspective back in 2016?" And I hate free time. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. Great idea. So, I put out the feelers, got everyone together and managed to get some amazing authors. We have Anthony Ryan, Cameron Hurley, Daniel Polanski, Fletcher, again, just I love the bloke's fiction. Anna Smith Spark. We've just added Anna Stevens as a stretch goal author. We have just a brilliant list of authors. Jed, if you don't mind, maybe posting a link to the Kickstarter. They can just
absolutely.
Go check.
Yeah. Link will be in the show notes for this episode. So if you're listening on the podcast player, just scroll down, check it out. If you're watching on YouTube, it'll just be in the description down there. Yeah, there's some great authors like Adrian Tchaikovsky, one of my personal favorites. Yeah. Justin Call, who I had him on my podcast, a different podcast actually, like just after his debut novel came out a few years back. It's cool to see him continuing with that, which is good. Some other great authors there as well. Trudy Kahneman, who I remember reading one of her books back when I was a kid. So this is
really down in Melbourne. So we've been pretty lucky actually. We've got a few Australian authors in it. We've got Devin Madsen as well. Jeremy Stahl, who just released Blind Space and is about to release. Oh, he's going to kill me. What's the name of the second one? Jeremy, I'm sorry.
That's all good. I'll do a quick Google. What else has he had? Stormblood?
I feel like that ship has sailed. Yeah, sorry. He's about to release Blind Space, and Stormblood was his first book.
That's it.
And I'm catching him for a beer tomorrow, so release this after.
You won't know about your betrayal. Oh, that's awesome. Stormblood has a sick cover as well. Really like it.
Oh, so good, right? I love the ambient blue and just that real cyberpunk feel. They have nailed that cover so nicely.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
But so we have that. We've got a beautiful cover by Felix Ortiz and Sean King. So just pretty much the indie publisher dream team.
Oh yeah,
right there. And we've got some interior art by Carlos Diaz, who does all of the covers for Grimdark Magazine. Got Greg Patmore is going to do, if we get to the stretch goal, he's going to do an audio version for everybody. So there's a lot of goodies that we're hoping to include in the final product.
Yeah, no, it looks epic. Yeah, we've had Fearless on the show as well. So yeah, this is definitely just like a alumni of the show going on the Kickstarter, which is nice to see. Cover looks amazing. No one quite does like 5-degree angled title text quite as good as Sean King. And this cover is just another epic example of why that can look so effective. Yeah, the interior art looks amazing as well. Yeah, it just looks really good. It just looks really good. So do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the themes of the Kickstarter? Because as I understand it, usually when you're doing these Grimdark Magazine Kickstarters, you sort of are building them around a bit of a concept. Is that correct?
Yeah. So for this one, pretty much Bradley just gave me a very straightforward, the king must fall was the idea. Do with it what you will. So I took the same approach for the authors and just said, like, this is the title. And I was just like, we just want to see, kings or leadership figures. So I'm hoping to see maybe a queen or two, some gang members, gang leaders, that sort of deal, falling. I didn't specify if they had to have already fallen or if they had to fall, if maybe they fell, but they didn't lose. In Grimdark, we love it when our protagonists don't quite get what they want. So I think there's going to be probably a fair bit of regicide, based on the type of stuff we publish and the type of stuff those authors love to write about. And hopefully some big battles, some sneaky assassins, some backstabbing betrayals. Just all the ways we love to see power come down.
Nice. And I'm really curious, like so you have a theme like that, when you're kind of pitching it to the various authors who you've got writing in the anthology, is that basically all that you're giving them, or are you giving them some other, kind of requirements in terms of what they're writing? Like what's that sort of pitching or brief process like to the authors?
Okay, so what I do for a living in a day job is I'm a bid manager, and so for a living I write pitches to clients to try and sell very large products. So not cheap, quick decisions, 9-month processes. So the key thing for me is something I was taught when I first started bid managing is that whenever you write something to a potential candidate, customer, or in this case an author, you have to read it back to yourself and ask yourself, why do I give a shit about this email?
Yes.
And so I feel that a lot of mistakes people make when they're doing pitches is they blurt out everything that sounds cool to them, and they forget to focus on the stuff that matters to the author. So for starters, is it an author that's going to want to write about the stuff that you're, hoping the theme you're basing the anthology about? So obviously doing your pre-research, so you're not hitting up I don't know, like a romance author for a dark fantasy story. Like maybe they could do it, who knows? But
I mean, you've got Michael R. Fletcher writing for you, so you have done that.
True. Yeah. Okay. Fair call. But then you also need to go, right, what are the, in as short a way as possible, what are the terms? What's the pay? What's the length of exclusivity? What rights do you want? What formats do you want? What are the deadlines? What are the word limits? There's a range of stuff you need to put in there, but you also need to make it look really attractive. So I made sure that I waited until I had that amazing mock-up of the cover, so they had something where they could visually link to and go, that looks sweet, the theme looks cool, the offer for payment and rights and whatnot looks at least fair and amicable, and then let's go for it. And obviously I got plenty of no's, plenty of sorry, I'm too busy, a fair few no responses, but that's just pitching. If you don't send it, you can't be told no, pretty much.
Absolutely. And are you approaching these authors like one at a time, hoping to, kind of get some big authors saying yes, so that then you can go to the other authors and say, oh, this person has signed up, do you want to be part of it as well? Or are you kind of doing more of a like mass approach to, speed up the process and make sure that you're not just waiting on one person to respond?
I did it in batches.
Okay.
So I sort of broke up a very long author list into a series of authors that for example, there's a group of them that I know and trust, and Michael R. Fletcher, Anna Smith Spark, Brad as well, and a few others where I go, I know that if I send something to these guys and ask them to join, if they're able to join, they're going to knock the story out of the park. It's going to land with the people that we sell to, our marketplace. They're well-known names. They're engaged on Facebook. They're on podcasts and that sort of deal. But importantly, is I know that I'm going to get a quality story. It is very unlikely that I'll have to go back to them and say, I'm sorry, you've missed the brief, because I know that they always do their best and they usually nail it every single time. Then I had a series of, I guess, authors that I didn't have much of a relationship with, but I knew their work and I thought, they're going to be really cool. So I'll pitch to them as well. And then I had, I guess, what you would call some marquee authors that I pitched to. So for example, and just so we're clear, I got told no pretty much every single marquee author, and that's just, that's just life. But, I hit up George Martin. I was like, hey, would you be interested in doing 1,000 words at this as an introduction on why the king must fall? Basically, almost every human being on the face of the planet wanted to die about, when did Joffrey kick the bucket? About 7 years back or 6 years back or whenever that came out. I was like, imagine having an introduction from him.
It would be pretty epic to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I hit up Joe Abercrombie. I hit up Raymond E. Feist. I hit up, as many big names as I could. I tried to hit up Neil Gaiman, but his email address is very elusive.
I can imagine. Does he even have it? I imagine you just have to draw a pentagram in the doorway of some 19th century chapel and send him a carrier pigeon to communicate with him.
Pretty much. And that's probably just how you get to his agent, let alone get to him.
His agent is actually Bizzlebub, the demon.
But yeah, so it's basically a process like that. And, I'm hoping I haven't hurt any of the authors' feelings, but sometimes, the authors that you get are not the first people that you get. But at the same time, you don't want the reversing to happen, which is where you send out 100 pitch emails, 40 people come back to you and you go, oh, balls, I've only got 14 slots.
Yes.
So it's kind of there's just a mixture of people you Hail Mary pass, people are going to, there's a high chance they'll commit and there's a very good chance they'll give you a great product. And then a group in the middle who you're like, I know their work, I love their work, they're recognizable faces, and, I can sell their name on a cover.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just, again, looking at the list of authors, it's like a pretty compelling, it's going to be a pretty compelling offer for sure.
We're very lucky, actually. There are a few in there that I was so sure I would just not even hear back from, because I just had no relationship with them. Most of them wouldn't have even known me from a bar or so. So I was very, very lucky, which is where hopefully, maybe they think my pitch email was terrible and they wrote back because they thought it was funny. But hopefully that's where my skill set, which is not really fiction writing, it's not fiction writing at all. My skill set is that sort of bid management work. That's where hopefully it's shone through and provided some benefit.
You don't have to say if you don't want to, but do you mind telling which authors you were particularly excited to get because maybe you weren't expecting to get them?
Yeah, probably two straight off the bat that I was not expecting to get would be Cameron Hurley and Daniel Polanski.
Nice. Yeah.
Both are just amazing, but I've just never had an opportunity to speak to either one before. Just never had a chance to engage with them. And, they were two of the ones where I just went, oh, I'm not sure, but I'd really love to publish them. And they wrote back and I was just like, yes, so good.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's pretty exciting. I definitely that feeling of reaching out to an author who you really respect, but you've never actually had any contact with. And you're just like, I really hope you can be on this podcast, or I really hope that you can be in this anthology or whatever. And then they're eager for it. It's a pretty incredible feeling. So yeah, congrats, man.
And most authors are really, really happy to, be engaged and chat to you. Like you look at, for Grimdark Magazine, Elizabeth Tabler, or Beth, she's one of the people that drives our online content creation team. And the people she's interviewed are amazing. And the list keeps growing. And the reason that it keeps growing is because she puts so much research into her questions. She rereads series because she's an absolute weapon at, at reading series. She'll work with, James, our other content driver. She'll work with the team to get insights and different ideas. And they really love, authors really love her interviews. And so now when we pitch to a new author to say, hey, do you want to interview? Like when we're pitching to Richard K. Morgan and those sorts of guys, we're able to sort of, I guess, send some of Beth's previous interviews and go, you can see the research that she puts in. This is not 10 standard templated questions. These are well-researched conversational questions. And that's actually how we got Richard K. Morgan to do the introduction for The King Must Fall, because I'd pitched him a couple of times before and he was like, I'm sorry, I don't really do, I don't do a lot of short fiction. I don't do short fiction at all. And, but if we figure out something later on, no worries. And then Beth did this amazing in-depth interview with him. And then off the back of that, I was like, hey, you've had a great experience. What do you think about doing the intro for this book? And he did the intro for this one. And he also did an introduction. I can't remember if it was before or after that interview for Neon Leviathan, the T.R. Napa collection that we published start of last year.
Yeah, because I saw the Richard K. Morgan testimonials on that, and I was like, wow, that's pretty good to get the author of Altered Carbon, like as that series was exploding as well, to blurb your book. That was pretty awesome.
Oh yeah. You should have seen Tim when I told him we got that. I think he nearly popped with excitement. But that is one of Tim's literary heroes. And if you ever get a chance to read Tim's book, he's so good at setting the scene and plucking the heartstrings. And and that's why I think Richard enjoyed that book so much. Just awesome. Really good themes throughout each story.
I think that's a big thing as well to like anyone out there who wants to interview an author or whatever, is like authors have heard the same questions hundreds of times, especially your big authors. Like they've all heard, where do you get your ideas from? And like that kind of generic stereotypical stuff. So even just one of the things I will sometimes do when I'm interviewing an author and like I want to ask them something that no one has asked them before is I will literally say, hey, what do you wish people asked you about that they don't ask you about? And as simple as that sounds, like that's something that authors really appreciate, because quite often they're like, I just really want to talk about this character or this thing I did, but no one's asking me any questions about it and I can't just steer the conversation there, so I guess I'm not going to talk about it at all. So that's definitely a really useful skill to have for anyone out there who's wanting to do interviews or whatever.
I actually think that's a great question to ask them as well, Jed. That's
thank you.
Like a really sharp way to look at it, because quite often they have stuff they want to talk about and just through bad luck or poor research, nobody's just thought to ask them.
Yeah, it's the ultimate interviewer's lazy question as well, because it makes you sound, first of all, I don't think I can take credit for it. I think it came from like a Tim Ferriss book or something like that. But second of all, it's like, it's the ultimate lazy question, but it's ironically really good because of that, because it's like, you're just allowing their interest to kind of steer the conversation. In terms of, like you mentioned before, how you like to work with authors who obviously are going to deliver stories that are close to the brief and that there's not going to be any revisions needed or anything like that. Have there been any times in the past where an author has sent you something that was just a totally bad fit, didn't really work, and you had to go back to them and kind of get them to redo it? Like, how do you approach that conversation? Because I, for one, would probably be terrified going back to an author who I really respect and being like, I'm so sorry, but you're going to have to write this again, or you're going to have to change this thing. So how do you kind of manage that conversation?
The first time I did it, I was quite similar. I was absolutely packing it when I sent off the email. I just went, this guy is going to fly over from the UK, walk up my driveway and throw a brick through the window with fuck you tied to it. And I was just thinking, but obviously you overthink this stuff, right? Like most of them have probably worked white collar jobs before. Most of them have, been to school and stuff like that, and where they have submitted things and somebody's looked them in the face and gone, Jed, I'm sorry, but that's not what I'm after. Yeah. And, they're all adults. I actually haven't had a bad experience with sending it back and saying, I'm sorry, this doesn't work for us. I think, I obviously won't name names, but probably the worst thing that's ever happened is I've gone back and said, look, I'm sorry, this one doesn't work thematically for our market. and they'll just come back and say, look, okay, I understand, I appreciate that, but I'm not going to have time to deliver you another story before your deadline. And unfortunately, that one author was our marquee author for the issue. That was the name in lights. But again, I'm very fortunate that I know some amazing authors, again, like Fletcher, like Anna Smith Spark. I know a fairly decent list of people who either have some stories sitting around that they can, kind of shoot over and we can run through it and make sure it lands, or are willing to, say, hey, you know what, give me a week and I'll punch something out. So in that case, it didn't end up being a problem. It was just I had to, I guess, ask a favor from one of the authors that I know.
Nice. So yeah, to this date, you haven't had any authors don their Viking chainmail armor, swim their longboats across to Australia and pillage your village and burn your house down to a crisp?
Honestly, the only, I guess, negative experiences that I've had with authors have been from our submission windows.
Yeah, fair enough.
So
fair enough.
Back when we used to do feedback, you get
1
in 20, 1 in 30 people who just refuse to believe their work is anything but perfect, and you were just the dumbest human on earth for not purchasing it from them. And that was one of the reasons behind why we don't do feedback anymore, because our guys would put in all this effort to be like, hey, here's constructive feedback to help you maybe sell this somewhere else. And sometimes they just get their heads bitten off. So I was just like, you know what? It takes a lot of time. It's not as efficient, and it's just sometimes really unappreciated. So it just didn't seem worth it in the end.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And yeah, pro tip, if you are submitting to a magazine and they give you feedback, don't rage out at them. I would probably say don't even send anything back, even a thank you or whatever. Just take it because they're busy. They don't have time to deal with your continued nuisancing. And that's rare that any places would give feedback. So it's probably more of an industry standard thing to not do that. So yeah, don't take it personally if you do get rejected from these magazines and you're applying for them or whatever.
Mate, if you look at the submission grinder and look at the percentage of people that actually get accepted into most magazines that pay anything above token, it is brutal, utterly brutal. And I guess you could look and say it's unfair and it's frustrating, and there's probably some great stories just never see the light of day. But unfortunately, that is just the industry we work in. And if I had crazy revenue and I could jam 30 stories into every issue, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I'd love to do it, but that's just not the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I remember a few years ago when I was kind of in that short story submission phase and using a submission grinder to find marketplaces and submit it. Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal, but it's also good because you look at other people and how much they're getting rejected from various publishers and everything, and you're like, oh, this is not anything personal. It's pretty standard. But I'm glad I don't have to do that these days as much. So that is nice. I'd love to transition into talking a little bit about, before we get into talking about Grimdark Magazine, which I definitely would like to talk a bit more about the kind of behind the scenes of that. What goes into creating a successful Kickstarter? Because you've done how many of these by now? This is the third one?
3. So 3? I've done Evil's a Matter Perspective that went really, really well.
Yep.
So much better than I ever thought it would go. We did one called Landfall, which fell so flat on its face it didn't even get off the boat.
Oh.
And then we did, and now we've got The King Must Fall, which has funded, and now it's just a question of how many stretch goals we can jam into it. I can say that what goes into a successful Kickstarter, in my experience, if you chat to a Sean Speakman or a Michael Sullivan and his wife Robin, or Dirk, they probably will give you hopefully somewhat similar answers, but probably a stack of other, different caveats and different points that I haven't thought of because their publishing models are different to mine. So for me, the key thing is, you want to make sure people are compensated that are contributing to it. So from day one, I've always made sure GDM pays people and pays as well as possible, avoided token payments, all that sort of jam. So straight off the bat, I made sure that we worked in good finances for everybody. And one of the mistakes I made with Evil was I tried to do the finances myself in full knowledge that I am a mathematical moron. And so I ended up making pretty much no money off that Kickstarter and only making it in the years that followed off the follow-on sales. So first things first, for this one, I reached out, used the whiskey economy to hire a friend of mine who's
the whiskey economy. I've never heard that term before. That's so good.
So he's a regional regional controller for a company that deals in products that have both fixed and transactional fees. And so, which is essentially what this Kickstarter is, right? You have fixed costs like your author pay, your cover art, and that sort of deal. But then you have more transactional and I guess variable costs in that when you do a print run, you get so many 100 books in your first print run at X dollars per book. And then every book after that is a different price. And so the more and more you sell, the more and more cost you add to your cost base. And so obviously you always need to make sure that you're keeping an amount of profit through the Kickstarter, no matter, as best you can throughout, depending on the source mix of people buying ebooks, special editions, hardcovers, and bookmarks even. You need to factor in all these things. They have to be paid for by somebody. And if you screw up, the Kickstarter's T's and C's make it quite easy for collectively the backer group to sue you as a creator if you screw up. So it's not something you can take lightly. Key thing, finances. Do not stuff up your finances. Build in a buffer because things always go wrong. Always go wrong. So that's probably one of the key points. The next thing is obviously you need to sell this product. So you need to have a super, super clear message that is almost short, blunt, but also fun, that tells people what they are buying. Yeah. And this is what we screwed up on Landfall. So we started out thinking we were going to compete with Serial Box and create an ongoing, thing of, monthly stories that were set in this world that they, as a team of creators, built together. Mm-hmm. And then about 3 weeks out or 2 weeks out from going live, I looked through the financials because, again, like a moron, I was like, you know what, I can do the financials. It'll be fine this time. I learned from last time. And I went, right, with the amount we're paying authors and the amount we're paying for this, that, and the other. And I just went, oh, shoot, I think we screwed up. And I realized that the amount of backers we would have to get at the price point that people would pay for a digital only product was so ridiculously high that it was just beyond impossible that we were going to find the thousands of backers that would have to get to pay for this product.
Yeah.
And so I was like, shit, what do we do? And so I was chatting to the co-creator, and we went, right, so let's just quickly flip this into an anthology product like the last one, because then we can bring in print products, we can bring in special editions, we can bring in a range of stuff that now allows us to make a higher amount of money per unit, which will help us pay the creator group. Yeah. And that basically ended up with not giving ourselves enough time to sit down, re-whiteboard what the sales message was, and redo the copy properly on the Kickstarter. So when people picked it up, we'd been marketing it the whole way in the lead up as something completely different to what it was. And then we didn't communicate the change in product properly, because I think we were both, the co-creator and I were probably so burnt out by this point, just trying to make this thing work. We just got to the fuck it point, hit launch, and then 3 days later just hit cancel, because we just went, you know what, we've balls this up so badly. And I think I have to admit that I probably burnt a couple of author relationships in that, and that was probably a big mistake. And one of my, I guess you'd say, my big regrets having been a part of GDM so far has been the way that product, the way that kind of collapsed and fell over with all the work that people put into it was just really, really disappointing.
Yeah, that would be a big shame. So it's definitely the buffer is really critical to have that in. I think Dirk has mentioned that as well on some previous episodes. What kind of like, you don't have to get into specifics obviously, but like what kind of rough percentage are you building into there for a buffer? And again, you don't have to get into specifics if you don't want.
That's okay. So the buffer is, I think I had it at about 12 or 14%. Mm-hmm. And then like I can tell you already that, bits of that are being eaten up in advance, and I've
Sure.
had to rework the spreadsheet again. So we made an announcement, I think about, it feels like 4 or 5 days ago, maybe a week ago, that we are partnering with the Broken Binding in the UK so that we can ship direct to them from our printer in Southeast Asia, and they will then ship to the UK and EMEA at a significantly reduced cost to what we were previously going to do it when we were shipping from the US. And so COVID has not been kind to shipping at all.
No.
Not at all. It's been brutal. And so pretty much what's happened is what was costing us for Evil, as a matter of perspective, I can't remember, I want to say $25 or something to ship from the US to the UK. So it wasn't that big a deal. Like, it was exy, but not so exy that the entire UK book market would just be like, what the hell, $50 a book. It actually cost us more to ship the book there than it does to like sell the actual book, which is just insane.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It is. And I didn't really have any other options until I had a random Twitter conversation with the owner of the Broken Binding. And I just went, hey, would you do this? And he went, yep, here's my costings. Here's what your new shipping will be.
Yeah.
And so obviously that benefits the backers, but I then have to pay for those books to be shipped separately. And so cut away from the pallet that's going to the US, cut away from the books that are coming to Australia, where I'm distributing from Sydney. And then that gets shipped over there. And that's a new cost that I didn't have before. And so, yeah, because when you're bulk shipping a pallet, it's fine. You've got a set cost per pallet. But then as soon as you start carving up that pallet, the shipping becomes quite uneconomical.
Yeah.
But the backer benefit is great because it's cheaper for them in the UK. They're a huge book market that I completely missed the boat on. And hopefully that's kind of been resolving itself over the last week, which has been good to see.
Yeah, okay. So that's definitely a good thing to bear in mind, because I'm not doing a book Kickstarter anytime soon, but in a few months' time, I will be doing a Kickstarter for totally side project. I'm making a board game with a friend, and we're going to be doing a Kickstarter to launch it. So definitely good to be aware of, the importance of building a buffer. I don't know if I can give details about it yet, but it's going to be just a card-based thing. I'll tell you off air. I'll tell you off air if you want to hear about it. But
definitely.
So it's pretty straightforward. It kind of like, it's short. It builds upon a game that almost everybody will have in their home. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, the ex-owners of Ragnarok Publications did a card game. And they'd probably be some good people to reach out to and ask what the pitfalls of the project are. And that's probably actually a big bit of advice, I think, for anyone running a Kickstarter. Call up or email somebody who's done it before and just ask them, where did you screw up? What cost you money last time? And they will hopefully be able to provide you with a few pitfalls that you can avoid.
Yeah, okay, that's definitely a good tip. You're right, because something as simple as a buffer, right? Like most people doing Kickstarters for the first time would probably just think, oh, okay, I'll just do 5%, or I'll just break even. I want to make sure that I'm being, as generous to my customers and backers as possible. And it's like, that's a great intention, but you actually won't be able to be as generous to them as possible if you don't have a bit of safety margin built in. So yeah.
Exactly. And be stupidly thorough in your costings. So, you may decide that a bunch of expenses are sunk costs, so that they come out of your bank account as opposed to coming out of the money that the backers give you. So, for example, our marketing is all sunk costs that comes from GDM's bank account versus waiting for money to come in, and that money is not backfilled from the backers, so it doesn't bump up. It doesn't bump up the amount of money we need to raise from them. But it's amazing how much these things cost. And I mean, you've got to factor in buying new ISBNs if it's a book. You've got to factor in, paying an artist, and you got to factor in like I did with Felix. I screwed up and I tried to drive him too much towards an idea that I had, and then he went down the track, and I was just like, this is crap. He's not enjoying it. I'm not liking it. And I just went, you know what, I've clearly put my foot on your creative throat and this isn't working. So we had to go, right, that cost, the work up to that point cost this much money, pay that invoice, cut it, move on to a new invoice for a work started from scratch again. So there are so many things that will go wrong. And if you don't have that buffer, it is really difficult to, and it hurts to reach into your bank account when you run out of money. And I know this because with Evil is a Matter perspective, I gave a stack of money to a distributor who went bankrupt. And then I had to repay that money elsewhere because, like I said a while back, the Kickstarter backer rules, if I had have just gone, sorry guys, I've blown that money, I'm stuffed, it makes it very easy for them to put a class action against you. And as a creator, you are warned outright. They might not, but if they do, the platform's probably going to make it easier for them to do it based on what you've agreed to as a creator.
Sure. And it makes sense with their business model as well, because obviously you don't want backers having bad experiences with it, and there is a lot of risk on them. So it makes sense. But yeah, obviously don't want it to happen. So that is very good to be aware of. Were there any other kind of mistakes you would suggest avoiding, or any other tips you have for Kickstartering, if that's even a verb?
So I think there's one of the things that really does my head in, there's a lot of very predatory marketing firms that prey on backers. And so what tends to happen is that most products, like in my experience, the book products have high-end value products that get sold very, very quickly. So you have a very small amount of customers driving driving the amount of money that you're raising up really quickly. So if you look at a graph of almost every Kickstarter, the first 2 days are just like a mountainside. And then once all those big products are sold, and all of a sudden your core fan base has gone, I've done it, I've backed the product, I'm great. And all of a sudden you switch to a very long, slow slope of a slog until right at the end, because you've switched from high-end expensive products to your more standard low-cost products. So all of a sudden you have to find a whole lot more people to fund, and you need to come up with some ideas on how you're going to get spikes in that middle section, how are you going to drive it up bit by bit, and then back towards your financial planning. Have you planned in enough product, the high-end product, I guess, to make sure you get as close to that 100% in the first couple of days? Because there's nothing worse than seeing a project that just misses out by $1,000, and someone's worked their guts out for 30 days to try and get it over the line, and it's just fallen short, for want of $1,000 or for want of $500. So pretty much what you need to do is plan so heavily your marketing, not for that opening bit, sure thing, plan it, hit your key targets, get rid of your big products and get them out the door. But in that middle bit, how are you going to kickstart the financial bumps? Which blogs are you talking to? Who are you asking if you can, have an interview on a video interview with, to that 28-day period or 26-day period or whatever it is. That is a point where if you've planned out an extensive marketing plan, even if it's just 5 pages of ideas of what you might do, that's going to help you so much, because in that period is when you'll get a whole bunch of marketing companies come up to you, and they'll be like, what, we have 500,000 people on our email list. And people go, 500,000 people, and it's only $200 to use you, so let's do it. But as soon as you ask the question, what percentage of those 500,000 people have backed publishing products, say in the last year? What percentage have done a click through off your email specific to, say, anthologies?
Yes.
Not even sci-fi anthologies, fantasy anthologies. Yeah, anthologies in general. How many have done that? What's your open rate? All of a sudden, when you ask for segregation, they go
very quiet.
It's a kitchen sink thing, or they just don't respond. Now, if you Jed, I'm not sure what you do for a day job. Sorry, mate, but
playground designing.
That's awesome, actually.
It's very different to writing, but yeah, it's good fun.
That's actually really cool. I've never met a playground designer before.
Yeah, well, this is what they all look like.
Just dashingly handsome and Australian, no matter where in the world you are.
You're too kind. You're too kind, Adrian.
But if you've ever worked with a marketing person in your company, as soon as you go to them, they know almost every single thing about every vertical piece of their email list. And you can be like, what is the click rate for people named Karen sitting in Sydney who like lollipops? And they go, I can get that for you. So it's not a capability thing. It's a marketing approach where they try to woo you with a massive number in the hope that you're in that huge, long 24-day slump. You're panicking enough to just give them money.
And then probably hoping that you don't follow up with them to actually track what results that's generating. So then you can just feel like it was worthwhile for the spend.
And exactly. And like some of the amounts that they ask to be paid sometimes seems so minimal and small, but you have no way of knowing if they have 500,000 email addresses. You've got no way of knowing if 200,000 of those email addresses are dead and non-responsive and have never opened one of their emails.
Yeah.
So it's just, you just need to be so careful. And if you have a predetermined plan that covers off what you're going to do in those 24 days, and you're willing to accept that some things work well, and some nights you'll go to sleep and you'll wake up the next morning and there are 20 new backers and another grand in the pot. But some days you'll go to sleep, you'll wake up and there are 5 less backers because 5 people have pulled their money out of the pot and walked away. And you can't let that panic you. You have to trust in the pre-work. But if you haven't done the pre-work, I feel that you're more likely to panic and end up just throwing and frittering more money away.
That is such an important point about predatory marketing agencies, because, and that applies to like a lot of services out there. If you're an author, and particularly if you have your email address on your website publicly, like I do, it's you will get a lot of people approaching you promising to solve all of the problems that you're facing. And maybe that's true, but I've yet to have had anyone cold email me with a solution to the problems that I'm specifically going through as an author. So yeah, I think it's just worthwhile remembering that if they did have such a predictable way of, producing book sales or Kickstarter results or whatever, the question you should be asking is, okay, well, why aren't you just doing this yourself to make what seems like an infinite amount of money that you can just print with no effort? And they're like, oh, we want to help other people. And it's like, okay, well, that could be true. Or it could also be the case that you can't do it. And you rely on, people who are feeling insecure about their books or about their Kickstarters or whatever to kind of give their money away. And that also, like, to some extent as well, I think that goes for a lot of software things too. Like there's some great, programs out there that are really useful for writers. And then there's a lot of stuff which you don't need. And people will really try to convince you that they need it. And so just be mindful of that, I think is a good thing.
Definitely. And I think somebody who has done a lot of research into the predatory marketing, especially to self-published authors, is Ben Galley. If you ever get a chance to look through his YouTube channel, there's a bunch of funny random stuff in there because he's a pretty hilarious bloke, but there's some really, really well-researched pieces on vanity presses and probably vanity marketers. I'm not sure if that's the right term for them, but
you've coined it, Adrian. You've coined it.
Vanity marketers. Here it is. But yeah, he's done some excellent work looking into that sort of behavior. And like, I don't get a lot of those emails, funnily enough. I think
interesting.
They just see publisher, and like when I was new, I used to get a few, but then over the years, they've just dropped off, and I barely hear from those sorts of things unless I'm running a Kickstarter anymore. But yeah, he's well worth having a look at.
Yeah, David Gogren is another good one as well. He has a lot of author beware stuff. Oh, and also the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association of America have like an authors beware section where they're like, oh, these publishers aren't legit. That's useful stuff to consider as well.
Yeah. Is that Writers Beware, or is that a different organization?
No, you're right. I think it is Writers Beware. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
That would make sense.
They're good.
They're pretty useful. And they do things like they're taking on Disney for the whole Disney must pay thing. So, they have the guns to do it. I'd love to transition to talking a bit about Grimdark Magazine. So you've said that you've been running it for about 7 years. Is that correct?
Yeah. I looked at LinkedIn this morning, 7 years and 3 months.
Heck yeah. So talk me through, like, why did you want to start that up, and what was it kind of like getting it off the ground? Because I'm sure a lot of people who love reading would love the idea of creating their own magazine, but it's incredibly difficult, I would imagine, particularly these days when there are so many entertainment options between your streaming services and everything else. to try to get people to, want a physical or a digital magazine even. So yeah, what was that kind of like the origin story of it?
It started out because, like you, I kind of was in the short story submission market for a bit, and I was getting my 4-hour rejections from Neil at Clark's World, and my 8 months rejections from Tor.com and all that sort of stuff. And there came to this point where I was just like, I looked at some of the magazines, like, you know what? And I didn't look at them all. I'm not going to pretend like I did thorough market research on this. I looked at a few and I got the shits, and I was like, you know what? There's no magazine dedicated to the kind of stuff that I like to read and write about. And so I just went, you know what? As usual, I hate free time. So this is what I'm going to try to do. And so I sat down with a mate, and a mate of mine was kicking off a consultancy business that helped people plan out businesses. And he just went, hey, we were sitting down over some beers at his house, and he just went, I got a whiteboard. Do you want to, can I practice building a business with you from scratch? And do you just, you can just take it with you? And I went, oh, bloody earth, let's do it. And so mapped it out. Went through some Simon Sinek marketing approaches, and who's the other guy? He's a bald fella, American bloke. God, I can't remember his name, but
Tim Ferriss?
Yeah, no, that's not him.
Another bald guy.
I've actually seen him live. Yeah, Seth Godin.
Yeah, nice, lovely stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and so those are two of the people that actually took, the message that I've carried throughout about creating really, really clear, this is exactly our niche. This is what we sell. We don't go outside that niche.
Yeah.
And so did that rather conveniently. My mum's a brand manager and a visual designer. So she, she kind of helped me out. And then she used to work for a publisher in Australia back when she was in her 20s and fresh out of uni. So she kind of had some idea of how it got put together. She knows how to put magazines together. She used to put together Hot Wheels and,
cool.
Street Fours or whatever they were, all these car magazines. So, I chatted with her, took some advice, and I just went, let's just do it. Chatted to my then girlfriend and just said, okay, I have this money and I just want to, I kind of just want to have a crack at it. And she gave me the advice that I gave her a little while back, where I said, go talk to someone else who's done it and find out what goes wrong. So I hit up Neil Clark from Clark's World, and I hit up another fellow who, to my absolute shame, I can't remember, his name's just escaped me. Like I said, terrible memory.
Do you remember what magazine he's from?
No, he actually ran a suite of magazines. He ran a head publishing company, and he had a bunch of magazines sitting under him. And I think, I just can't remember what they were. This was, like I said, seven odd years ago. And pretty much what they did was both of them just came back and said, look, if you want to lose a whole bunch of money, get really frustrated and, get burnt out pretty quickly by working a lot and not achieving anything, you should start a publisher. And I just went, well, I was just like, well, that just sounds like being an author, except I get throw money at it. And so I was like, let's give it a go. And I was in a very fortunate position of, having no debts, no major responsibilities. We were lucky we'd found a nice little apartment that didn't cost a lot. So I did have the disposable income to do. And that would be, if anyone ever says to me, I want to kick off a magazine, how do I do it? I would say you can expect to not make money and have to put in money over a long period of time. So for us, it took 4 years to break even.
Wow.
So it takes time, but there's a lot of lessons you can learn. So like when I first started, I was just like, I'm not using Amazon. No, not using it. I'm just going to set up my own web store.
Sure.
So I used
Take that, Bezos.
Yeah. So, I set up Shopify, which costs like 50 Australian a month to run on your website.
Yeah, it's expensive. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's sexy. And then it wasn't until about 2 issues in, I can't remember who pulled me aside and just went, what the hell, you fucking idiot. Just get rid of that. Get rid of that cost. Chuck it on Amazon and just do affiliate links to your own book. And then all of a sudden I realized, okay, so that creates 2 streams of income.
Yes,
and so absolutely. Publishing in what I do is all about creating a lot a lot of little streams of income to create a river of income that pays for your operations.
Sure.
And so about probably about 2 years ago, and excuse me if I'm ranting and going off track here, but about
No,
2 years
this
ago,
is what I want to hear about. This is perfect.
Yeah, cool. So about 2 years ago, I went, okay, I actually need to, if I'm going to keep doing this, I have to draw a line in the sand. Either I go, right, I'm only ever going to break even. I'm not going to, this is never going to go anywhere. Or I need to look at somebody else who's doing the same sort of thing that I am with web content and publishing and see why they do it better than I do. So I went over to Tor.com's website and went, right, they kind of do the same thing I do, just a million times better than the way I do it.
Sure.
And I realized that they had this constant stream of content coming off their site. Their hits were just in the thousands and thousands every single day. So they're creating so much traffic, which they could then drive towards those new novellas that they started releasing a few years back.
Yeah, I remember that.
Went, that's genius. And so I went, right, that's what I'm going to do. So I linked up with James and eventually Beth. We built a bigger, more robust team of reviewers who were just mad keen to get stuck into it. They're volunteers. They essentially get paid in advanced reader copies.
Yes.
And so pretty much they're just sold of the earth people. And we just got stuck in to going, right, how do we get from one post every other week to how do we get to a post a day? How do we get to a post a day and then another post every 2 or 3 days? How do we create this constant stream of content that we're using to get people to come to our website to then see our products? That drives affiliate revenue. It drives sales of our publishing products. It drives our ability to say to people, hey, you want to advertise on our website and buy some advertising space? Here's our stats. Here's the amount of people we reach on Facebook, Twitter, the amount of people that come through our website every month, which at the moment I think is probably around 40,000 people a month. And so we go, and all of a sudden you can say, okay, that's how I can build a bunch of streams of revenue to create a river of money that we can use to build the operation, to pay, I paid Alexis DeWick, who's from the Grimdark Fiction Readers and Writers Group. She runs Acid Media, builds websites that are amazing. She's built our one and Before We Go blog, and then a bunch of other ones outside of the industry, but she's brilliant. Could afford to pay her to rebuild our website. And then pretty much it's put me in a position where I'm pretty confident that either end of this year, maybe likely into next year, I can start going, all right, for our reviewers, how do I start creating a pool of money that I pay you?
Awesome.
So to me, like being able to have money moving through GDM and to the people that create it and run it is probably one of the most important goals that I have, sitting right alongside, all the fanboy pieces of fiction that I want to publish from all the people that, I love reading.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's really cool hearing that journey. Cause I think again, just to emphasize, like 4 years, that's a very long time to wait before something becomes profitable. How did you kind of have the patience to go through that? Like, did you have it planned out such that you were confident that the financials are going to work? Was it just more of a blind optimism thing? Was it you were just really enjoying it?
Yeah, I'd call it blind optimism at the outset. So from the start, like the first 2 years was just like, oh my God, I've just published Ask Scott Backup. Oh my God, I just got to interview Joe Abercrombie. Holy shit, I just did an interview with Cameron Hurley. Oh wow, we just got the first time we've been quoted on the back of someone's, traditionally published book. All these things.
You see heaps these days. You guys are cropping up everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So all those moments of excitement probably lasted to about the end of year 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then the start of year 3 was when I started, I'd get to the start of the quarter. I wouldn't hear back from some authors because my pool was quite small. And I'd start going, oh, do I actually want to keep doing this? And that's why by the time we got to year 4, we just had some luck. I think feel like year 4 might have been when we ran Evil as a Matter of Perspective. And by the end, it was so cooked that that was a point where I hit that line in the sand where I just went, okay, I've just produced something amazing. It's sitting on my bookshelf. It's real. Everyone's received their books. I don't owe anyone money. The last issue broke almost exactly even to the dollar. And I kind of spoke to Fee and I just went, this might be the moment to say, I've had a good run. I've got something for my trophy case, which is the Evil as a Matter of Perspective print. And it's time to just say, you know what, this doesn't work. It's never going to be something massive. And then that's the point where I started thinking, no, actually, I've just spent 4 years getting it to this point. I can see things that are working, things that aren't working. How do I hit these next steps? And then eventually that led to, a couple of years ago, meeting up with the people that run the magazine now.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah,
except Mike,
that's
which I should say has been around since almost day one. He'll throw a beer at me for not mentioning that.
I mean, Grimdark, I'm sure he just saw that word and was like, cool, I'll give you all my stories from now on. That is our thing. Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I appreciate you sharing that story because at least in my mind, and this has gone back for a couple of years, like Grimdark Magazine has always been like one of the big blogs out there when it comes to fantasy book reviews, along with, probably Book Nest, which I used to write reviews for. So I'm probably a bit biased there.
Yeah, no, they're great.
Book Nest is awesome. They have some great reviews there. I think it's like over 2,000 reviews as well, which is pretty huge. But yeah, Grimdark Magazine definitely is like one of the ones that's super up there for me. And I think you guys have done such a fantastic job of not only like positioning yourself within the grimdark genre and just being like very clear on what you are, which makes it really easy for people like me, when they hear about it to just go, oh, I know what I can expect. But also I feel like in a sense, it's almost sort of defined and kind of shaped the grimdark genre in that sense of just understanding what books could be classified as grimdark, how you guys sort of analyze and review them. So yeah, it's done really well. So I'm glad that you have persevered for one.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, I do need to say that like the reason that this magazine works is because of the people that essentially volunteer their time.
Sure.
Mike, who's been, like I said, he's edited now 26 issues of GDM, 2 anthologies, 1 collection, and he's about to do another one. Pretty like anytime I try to give him anything, he basically tells me to go fuck myself. So like he does it because he loves it. He does it because it's helped him build his own amazing book of clients. He gets to edit for some amazing authors and that sort of stuff. But without him, the publishing side of it pretty much falls down because I'm not a very good editor. I'm great at organizing stuff. I'm great at, having my hand in 10 pots at once to make sure I understand what's going on. But he makes that side of it run. And then Beth and James make the web content side of it run. And I feel we've probably got about 30 people in our reviewer pool. There's probably about 15 who are quite active. Those guys make the web content work. And like I said, they're not getting 50 or 70 or $100, per review or article or piece of work. They're doing it because they love books and, they're doing it because they like contributing to the community. And like hands down, like I said, without those guys, and that's probably the major difference is that prior to, 4 years ago, I tried to do a lot of it myself. And then after that, I went, that doesn't work. We need to get the right people in to help us drive this forward. But then there also has to be a goal in my mind. And most of them, I'm sure when I show them the idea of, paying them at some point, they will all tell me to probably, like I said, go fuck myself. But, that's my goal, is to find a way to reward them, a bit better than I have been.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think it is for a lot of reviewers, myself included, when I was in that phase, it is a huge reward to just get access to advanced reader copies and everything. But yeah, obviously you want to try to build upon that. Also, just for clarifying, because I realized I made this mistake before, by Mike, you're talking Mike Myers, who edits for Grimdark Magazine, right? Yeah, cool. Because before when you said his name, I was like, Mike Fletcher again. Stop mentioning that guy. And then I realized, oh no, there's multiple Mikes who are involved here. So just wanted to clarify that for our listeners. We'll wrap this up in a second. Yeah, I've heard he's a great editor. I actually would love to work with him one day, so I might reach out to him for the next book potentially.
Yeah, the great thing about him is, in the same way that I'm like, publishing is my jam. Mm-hmm. He's not, he's like editing is his jam. He has a list of English lit degrees and masters as long as his arm.
Sure.
He talks about participles and all this random stuff that I'd never heard of before I spoke to him. He's blunt, he's brutal, but he's brilliant. Highly recommend him. GDM would not have been, we wouldn't have been, what do you call it? We wouldn't have won that Stabby Award without him. So the 2017 Stabby wouldn't have got that. We definitely wouldn't have been shortlisted for the British Fantasy Award a couple of years back either. Like he makes every word on that page pop.
And that's another presumably draw card for authors wanting to write for you as well, as like, especially if they've heard about him or if they've had experiences with him in the past, they know there's going to be a good editor on the end of this. So not only do I get the backing of the magazine, but I get to work with this editor and hopefully improve my craft and pick up some new skills through that as well, which is useful.
Because if it was just me, their stories would just look like probably second drafts.
Give yourself more credit. I'm sure it wouldn't be that bad. Sure, it wouldn't be that bad. Third drafts, maybe.
Maybe third draft at best. Thanks.
We'll start wrapping this up in a second because we've been talking for like 70 minutes, which is insane. So thank you for your time.
No worries.
First of all, quick shout out to Nate Orban, who did the review for the Thunder Heist. Thanks, Nate. Not sure if you're listening. It was a great review. I really enjoyed it. So definitely check out the Kickstarter. I'll give you a second to plug it again in a moment. I'm going to be getting a copy. Can't wait. That cover alone is probably worth the price of admission. And I got to support Michael Fletcher, I suppose. Otherwise, he'd probably come and throw a chilled like a cheese sandwich at me or something. Or at the very least, just harass me on future episodes of the podcast. So I'm contractually obliged to do that. But yeah, Adrian, do you want to maybe just again point to where people can get that Kickstarter? I'll include a link in the show notes and everything. But yeah, if you just have any final words about it.
King Must Fall. We are within spitting distance of adding 2 more authors and basically an audio version of the book for every single backer. With a bit of luck, we'll add another 2 more authors to it. So jump on board. Like I said, this stuff's my jam. I love doing it. This book's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, awesome. And we're a big fan of spit on this show as well. I think we've made many jokes about how Michael Fletcher loves including all sorts of bodily fluids, particularly spit, in his books, which I'm sure you're
so good.
Very familiar with. So if you are a fan of spit and you also like good stories, then definitely check out The King Must Fall. Adrian, thanks so much for coming on the show and for talking for like a ridiculous amount of time. I was planning for this to go for half an hour, but this was just such a fun conversation. So no, it's great. Like I love those chats where you're just like, it'll be half an hour, it'll be good. But then you get into it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Like I don't want Adrian to stop talking. This is just such a cool insight into publishing that I've never had before. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there any places, I guess you probably want people going to the Kickstarter, but beyond that, obviously, are there any places where people can follow you on social media? Obviously, Grimdark Magazine is your thing. Any places else that you would like people to head to?
I don't really have any personal ones up, so it's really just any of the GDM stuff is perfect, mate.
Awesome. All right, Adrian, thanks for coming on the show. Everyone definitely check out The King Must Fall. Awesome Kickstarter. I can't wait to get my copy as well. Thanks, Adrian. See ya.
Cheers.